Hey folks, today I want to talk about the faction system in Crusader Kings 3 and how I think it could be improved in the future. Now, we're not aware of any changes coming this year in Chapter 5 of content. That is going to be religion, trade, economy. Maybe Chapter 6 will get something around this, but today I just wanted to talk about it. One of my discussion videos I like doing on the channel. So if you do like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and do let me know what you think in the comments down below. Now, we interact with the faction system every day in our campaigns, in our games of Crusader Kings, but to be honest, it's not a very interesting system, is it? You fill up these bars, as you can see on the screen at the moment. Well, you don't. I guess your vassals do. And if the bar fills up to a certain point, they can send an ultimatum to you and make you try do something. If you say no, you have some battles, you'll generally win, and then you can do some interactions with those vassals. You know, you can revoke their titles, all those kind of things, or you can just pardon them and just move on with it. Or if your army is generally powerful enough, they never get the opportunity to push those demands. There are other mechanics as well. If you make an alliance with them, if you get a hook on your vassal, you could try get rid of these factions as well. As a vassal, you can also go to your liege, petition them, and they can get rid of these factions as well. But overall, I think this system, like, it works for what it's supposed to be, but I think it could be a lot better in the future. I'm sure many of you agree with this, but I wanted to talk about how I would make some improvements. So currently, as I said, this system is a little bit boring. The outcomes are usually have some battles or don't, give in to their demands or don't. There's no real middle ground or interactivity. It's very black and white. There's no kind of grey area where you can interact with it and make different things happen. So what I would like to do with factions is really lean into the vassal stances system. We're going to cover that in a minute. And then also maybe merge it together with a system like the movement system or the block system from Japan, and make these factions a little bit more like a living, breathing thing where they have other demands and you actually interact with them in your gameplay. Now, if you don't know what the vassal stances system are, we're going to take a look at that now. So you can see this on the screen at the moment. This is the Holy Roman Empire, and these are the different vassal stances. You have courtly, glory hound, parochial, zealot, minority, minor landholder, and belligerent. I think that's all of them. And these different vassal stances, they have different things they look for, what they like, what they dislike, and depending on how your realm is set up and the decisions you make, they have different opinions of you based on those decisions. Now, as you can see, the different opinions aren't really that bad. I think the worst one we see here is -25, which you can pretty much negate by having a feast. This doesn't really interact with your gameplay that much day to day. I bet many of you never even look at this system, and maybe even realize it exists, because generally you can ignore this, much like factions. But I think building on top of this would be a lot more interesting. So what one of these factions would be is your courtly vassals, and maybe even your courtiers, to make courtiers that little bit more interesting as well. And if you look at this, what do they look for? So courtly vassals believe in nobility and tradition and wish to preserve existing hierarchies. And then, as it will say for all the different ones here, social and compassionate vassals, in this example it is different for each one of these, may adopt this stance. And then, as you can see in this tooltip, they like and dislike things. So in this example, gives them court positions, creates new titles, invites them to feast activities. What I would do with this system is make those likes something they actively try to pursue. So they would come up to you and say, look, you've got an empty court position. We think you should put this person in that position. They might say, look, you can create this kingdom title. I know why you're not doing that, because you don't want succession to affect it, but we think you should do this, and maybe they would push that to happen. And then also, as you can see, invite them to feast activities. Maybe they come to you and say, look, the court's been a bit boring recently. Why don't we hold a tournament? Why don't we hold some feasts? Why don't we go on a hunt? And you could say yes, or you could say no and take that opinion modifier, and they would be a little bit more disaffected. And then ultimately they might rebel against you. Something along those lines, making it so you interact with these factions. You could have a whole bunch more events around them as well, where they would come, like I say, and ask you about these things. And you can see the things they dislike, giving away titles to lowborn characters. So again, if you do that, maybe you get an event and they come up to you and say, why did you give it to that guy? Why didn't you give it to, you know, this dude over here instead? And then you have to interact with that and decide what you want to do. You can see more examples here. So this is Glory Hounds. This one's a little bit easier to talk about, I guess, with ideas. So these are vassals that obviously, they like attacking people, all those kind of things. So Glory Hound vassals, they care about standing and prestige and showing the world the strength of the realm they are part of. And you can see again what would often make a vassal part of this faction. And then what do they like? Having partition succession law, achieving victory in offensive wars, and having them in hunt activities. So again, looking at these, the vassals in this faction would come to you and say, do you know what, liege? You haven't attacked anyone recently. We think you should do that. And then you could say yes, no, you know, make that decision. Or maybe ultimately, if you don't do that, maybe a bunch of the vassals get together. And if you're playing as England, Maybe they just go off and attack France for some reason, and you have to deal with that. You have to maybe side with France against your own vassals, or maybe to not look weak, you say, yes, I always wanted you to do that, and I'll come help you do that as well. And you didn't really want to do that, of course. You could have a bunch of these mechanics around it. Not so much, again, the only outcome is fighting them or not fighting them. You could get dragged into different wars, things like that. So I think especially for Glory Hounds, you could have some really interesting things there. You could even have something around like White Peace. They're Glory Hounds. They don't want you obviously to lose wars, but maybe they don't even want you to do White Peace as well. Maybe when you try do a White Peace outcome, they would come to you before you're able to do it and say, look, Lord, we don't think you should do this. We want to carry on this war. We're doing very well in it. We don't want you to White Peace. And maybe they can force you not to do it. And if you say no, they might rebel against you again and say, look, we're going to put this other guy on the throne because you're too weak, you're too boring. We like going on wars everywhere, and you're really kind of giving into other realms. Even with White Peace, we don't like that. And you could have some really cool mechanics around that as well. I think it would just make it a lot more interesting. The next one we can look at here, what's the next one? Parochial. But you can see here, parochial vassals want stability, decentralization, and peace, and for the realm to stay out of outside affairs. So they really just want to be very insular. They don't care about everything outside the realm. So as you can see, currently in the game, they like building things. They like you having friends with your close family, and they like you using the domestic affairs counselor task, which is all about, again, looking inwards. So maybe, again, they could come to you and say, build some buildings, Lord. You haven't improved the realm. You're too busy in these wars everywhere. Why don't you stay at home? Build up the realm internally, and then maybe you build buildings. Maybe they stop you declaring war. Maybe they come to you and say, if they're powerful enough, look, we're making you have a truce with everyone for 5 years. You can't attack anyone, and you can worry about our realm and no one else. And maybe you would be in a position where you couldn't fight them off, or you don't want to deal with the consequences of that. So you agree to that demand, and then you can't attack anyone. But obviously you could say, no, who are you to tell me what to do? And then maybe you go in and crush them, revoke their counties, all those kind of things as well. So again, just some different gameplay there. What's the next one? As you can see is Zealots. So if we look at this one, Zealots, they are obviously focused on matters of faith, and they are swayed by pious decisions. And then zealous or vengeful vassals are often this stance, as are clergy, obviously. And what do they like? They like you building temples, they like you learning languages, they like you having virtuous traits, and they also like you going on pilgrimages as well. So you can see how this could work. Maybe they say, look, that vassal you have, he's a Satru, we're all Catholic. Are you going to try and convert him? And if you say no, then you have to deal with it. Maybe they start a little war against them or something like that, trying to push your hand. Or maybe if they're powerful enough, they can push you to join a crusade, something like that as well in the gameplay. And even playing as a vassal, this could make some interesting gameplay for you as well. You could go around trying to convert people to your religion, make them zealous, and then you can go to the king and try push things from that direction as well. I think this would obviously mix in quite well with the upcoming religious DLC. We shall see how that plays out. But I think you could have so many interesting mechanics with this. They could even push you to go on pilgrimage. Maybe if you're a very sinful ruler, or maybe you're just not interacting with the Pope that much. Again, they could say, look, you should go on pilgrimage somewhere. And you could say, no, I'm not interested. But again, if they're powerful enough, maybe you have to do that to keep them on your side. Or maybe there's even another claimant to the throne, your brother or somebody, and they go up to these vassals and say, look, the king isn't that pious, but look at me. I've been on pilgrimage. I've been to Jerusalem. I've fought in this crusade. Why don't you join with me and we'll try overthrow the king? Those kind of mechanics, just making it a lot more interesting in how these factions operate in the game. The next one we look at, minority. So this is all about, obviously, minority faiths, cultures, if they feel marginalized by the liege. And then as you can see, who is likely to join this faction. But for this one, it would be those smaller cultures, faiths, banding together, trying to get some protection for their faiths and cultures. But what if ultimately, if you mistreat them, again, if you're playing as England, maybe you take over Scotland, and then they're the minority of your realm. Maybe they can go to France, or maybe even the King of France goes up to them and says, if you rebel against England, if you try get independence for the Scots, I will help you in that war, try help you win it. But then maybe they become a tribute of France, something along those lines. So again, you could have some interactivity with the other realms around you. If you're England, you take over a slice of Ireland. Your Irish vassals would then go to those independent Irish realms and say, help us in our rebellion. If you are successful, maybe we'll vassalize to you, something along those lines, and have it so they interact that little bit more. You can think of other examples as well. If you have a pocket of a Satru vassals, maybe they could go to Denmark or Sweden or Norway or someone and say, hey, come help us in independence and we'll become part of your realm. And again, when they bring that demand to you, maybe they come to you and say, we should have protections for a Satru. If you say yes, then they have those protections. But if you say no, you get into this warfare and maybe you'll lose them as a vassal. But even if you say yes and give them protection, well, obviously the zealous part of your realm, they're going to be upset with you, and then maybe they'll come to you with a request, and then you'll have to deal with them as well. So there's so many ways these could interact with each other. There's 2 more to go, so let's cover them. So minority landholder. So as you can see for this, minority landholders wish for freedom and low taxes. So for this one, you could actually use one of the current faction ones, lowering your crown authority. That would just make sense. Or maybe if they're powerful enough, if there's enough of these smaller realms, maybe some kind of confederation of minor barons, they could come to you and say, you have this land over here, you have this castle, well, we think you should give that away to one of our friends, and then really building up their power a little bit in your realm. You could also have this where they would try break up larger vassals. So if you have a large realm and you have a couple of big vassals, if the minor lords kind of come together and say, look, these are the vassals, they're getting too powerful for us, can you break them up, please? And obviously you would have to say yes, no, try interact with that. Do you want to upset your larger vassals, or do you want to keep the minor lords on your side? It would be something you'd have to decide which way you want to go with that. And again, thinking back to the previous example, maybe you would have as England, France come up to some of your minor landholders and say, I think the king's mistreating you. Why don't you come join good old France over here? We'll give you a lot of freedom. We'll give you lower tax, lower levies, but you'll have to be part of our realm, but we'll help you fight in this faction war against your liege. And then there is one more of these, so we'll cover that one as well, and that is belligerent. Belligerent vassals seek examples of authority from their liege. They often partake in tournaments to witness the liege's prowess at first hand. So this one's a lot more. Think of something like Game of Thrones. They would come to you and say, put these tournaments on, and then all these battles. Now, it would be risky. Maybe they say, do a tournament and you have to fight in it. And then obviously you could get killed by accident, or one of these people might kill you on purpose, and really like the outcomes of that as well. So this is all about, as you can see here, having high crown authority, having tournaments, having hunts, winning duels. So you can see how you could have, like I just said, these tournaments they kind of make you put on, or maybe they put on a grand tournament. And if they're powerful enough, they basically force you to go, because you can imagine them in your realm saying, I'm putting on this tournament, the king is going to come and joust in my tournament. And then if you say no, you look very weak to your subjects, so you might have to do it. And then obviously it could go all very well for you and they'll be happy, or there could be a more sinister side of this and maybe they're trying to kill you at one of these tournaments. Again, I just think it would bring a lot more mechanics to how these factions play out. But that's the main idea around all of this, just making these vassal stances especially a little bit more important in the game. Yes, they like things, they dislike things, but ultimately it's mainly just opinion modifiers. And once you have a stable realm, you don't really have to worry about that too much. Generally, everyone likes you for the most part, unless you're doing something really silly, or obviously you're doing something specifically against them. Once you've been in charge for a while, it's very hard to have bad opinion from your vassals at some point. Whereas I think if you had these vassal stances a little bit more important in the faction system, you would have these active things you have to deal with. And then also, as you can see in this tooltip for belligerent, these stances do have preferred heirs for your realm. So you can see in this example, it's heirs with high prowess, and they choose an heir that you have, and that is their preferred heir. Obviously, if you have Confederate partition, there's not much you can do about it, but especially once you get primogeniture, for example, it is something you can kind of interact with a little bit to try get the preferred heir of your realm. But I'll be honest, even if you go against what your vassals want, it doesn't really affect you too much. Yes, you can get installed so-and-so as a faction, but again, if your army's powerful enough, it doesn't really affect you that much. But what if, like happened historically a lot, obviously I'm English, so a lot of English examples I'm aware of, where you had this succession, the king said, look, this son of mine is going to take over. All the vassals said, yeah, that's great. And then as soon as the king died, they were like, nope, we don't actually want that guy. We want your third son. He's a lot cooler. He's a good fighter, something along those lines. The first heir that you had, he's a little bit Weasley. We don't really like him that much. He's a bit of a bad person. So we're going to raise up and try get our person on the throne. Now, again, that does kind of play out in the faction system already, but not really. I don't think you have that direct link between them. Whereas what you would have with this is the vassal stances, and it would show you who of your heirs they prefer, and maybe if enough of them like a different heir that you have, they would come to you and say, look, this guy should be in charge. And if you say no when you died, you would have a civil war happen. You would have the heir that you put in place, his vassals, and then all these people that didn't want him in place, they would rise up and try push their person onto the throne as well. So you could kind of have set up civil wars almost, where you have to deal with it in some way. Now, obviously, you would have ways to counteract this. You could make alliances. You could just make them like you more. Maybe if you give them enough, you could buy them off. You know, again, historically, a lot of the times a ruler would come in place and then just give away castles to people, give them loads of gold, give them loads of positions, and that would make them happy enough to not worry about it. But you would have these kind of like more interesting successions where these different factions of your vassals come together and say, look, Henry over here should be the king. I don't like Stephen. Get rid of him, put Henry on the throne instead. And you would have to decide, do you want to do that? Do you not want to do that? Maybe that heir would then go to another realm and build up an army and then try and invade you. And again, those vassals could then rise up with him, side with him, and then try to depose you off the throne as well. So anyway, folks, I won't waffle on too much. Let me know what you think about this. Just a quick video, a discussion around the faction system and how I think the vassal stances system could be a much better way for this to work. You would obviously have some other factions as well that weren't tied directly to it, but I think it would make other characters in your realm, your courtiers, and even other rulers a little bit more interesting in your campaigns and something you would have to think about and actually actively manage and not just be, well, they might not like me. Well, they've got to fill this bar up. If they don't fill it up, it doesn't matter. If they do fill it up, doesn't matter. I've got enough money. I've got enough mercenaries. I've got enough allies. I'll just beat them every time. So it doesn't even really matter what they're complaining about. I'm always just going to say no and beat them. And then it doesn't really affect me at all anyway. Like I say, unless you get stuck in a bunch of different warfare, and then it can affect you if you just got too many battles to be doing. But that is, again, pretty rare to happen with these wars. I think most of us generally just defeat them, just get rid of them, and don't really worry about this too much. But anyway, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you like this idea? Is there other ways you would think this would work as well? Do you like the idea of using like the movements or block system from the content we got last year, or is there a better way you think this could work? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Hit the like button if you haven't already, and also subscribe to the channel. I cover all the news around Crusader Kings. I do these discussion videos, I cover mods, and I also live stream twice a week as well. Do drop by if you can, and there's all the news around Chapter 5. I cover the dev diaries, all those good things, so do subscribe if you haven't already. But we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you all next time.